Yes. Theme. What the story is about. The moral of the tale. According to a book on writing that I read so long ago I cannot remember the name, the theme is like the current of a river that affects and pushes everything in the story. Wow. What an inspiring and useless analogy. According to the Oxford English Dictionary via Wikipedia, a theme is a main topic, subject, or message within a narrative. The article goes on to say that a theme can often be summed up in a single abstract noun or noun phrase like love, death, betrayal, nostalgia, parenthood, coming of age, humans in conflict with technology, and the dangers of unchecked ambition. This gives us a pretty good idea regarding the generally understood definition of theme, mainly that it is an abstract concept. Abstract as in it exists only in thought rather than as something concrete. Theme is often described very nebulously, as if it is some incorporeal thing within stories that cannot fully be grasped. This makes sense because a theme is meant to be abstracted, whereas a story is concrete. When we study a story to discover its theme, we extract an all-encompassing meaning from the events of the story. So these definitions are true. They describe what a theme is, but they aren't very useful when you are trying to write one. Trying to learn how to write a theme is made more complicated by the fact that often the more overt a theme is, the worse the execution of the story is. They end up feeling cheesy or preachy. As a result, discussions of theme end up distancing themselves from the specifics of storytelling. Even though we know the story is the vehicle of the theme, we also know that the story shouldn't outright state the theme, so beginning writers can have a hard time learning how to purposefully construct thematic stories because of this barrier of abstraction. We understand how to extract a theme, but how do we infuse our stories with one? We have to figure out how to take the abstract and make it concrete in our stories. When I first started writing, theme was always the hardest concept to grasp. I found it difficult to find good resources on writing themes. However, I kept going and have since found lots of different thoughts and theories on how to express themes in stories. This video is a synthesis of the ideas I found work for me, put together into a single system. So now, I get to be the resource and tell you about it. My system is made up of 3 categories that are used to infuse story with meaning. 3 core elements of story that we can use to make themes concrete. Theme arises in stories as a result of the interaction and weaving together of these elements: character, world, and plot. I call this relationship the Thematic Triangle. Each element is a side that makes the triangle. Each one has its own piece to the puzzle. They are woven together into a single tapestry. The key to writing with purpose and infusing your story with meaning is understanding the part each element plays and how to weave them together. I'm going to start by discussing character. There isn't any particular order in which these elements need to be approached. They're all equally important. However, everyone writes differently, and as a result, some authors emphasize certain elements in their process. That is natural. However, learning about all the elements is important to becoming a well-rounded author. I start with character for 2 reasons. The first is that my personal writing style is character-focused, so I find it easiest to discuss theme by starting here. The second is that the element of character is the one that most closely relates to the abstract definition of theme, because it often includes a thematic statement in the form of a character arc. A character arc is the internal journey that a character undergoes throughout the course of the story. Usually it's how they change or overcome personal flaws and vices. Specifically, this is a positive change arc. There are other types, but this seems to be the most common. There are many models and ways of understanding character arcs. What I find works best for me as a way of connecting to theme is K.M. Whelan's lie versus truth model. This character arc model views the arc through the lens of the character's core beliefs. Core beliefs are beliefs about the world and about life that drive our actions and determines how we interpret the things around us. For example, one person could have a core belief that you should only ever help yourself because others won't help you, while another person might believe that you should help others whenever possible because it's the right thing to do. Those 2 opposing beliefs will result in behaviors and actions that reflect them. However, these 2 beliefs cannot both be accurate. One of them is a lie, and the other is the truth. A character arc is based on what the character believes and whether the story is written to show that belief to be true or false. As the story progresses, their beliefs will be challenged, and they will have to reconsider whether they will continue believing in it or change their beliefs. Whether the story considers the belief a lie or the truth, and what they believe at the beginning and end determine the type of character arc. In the positive change arc referenced earlier, the character starts the story believing in the lie, and by the end they will reject the lie and believe in the truth. A fall arc is the opposite of a positive change arc, in which the character believes in the truth but falls from grace and embraces a lie instead. Another type of arc is a flat arc, in which the character starts out believing in the truth, and despite great opposition, holds onto it. And there's still more types and variations of arcs. Regardless of what kind of arc the character undergoes, the lie and the truth of the lie versus truth model is often what provides the thematic statement in traditional definitions of theme. In terms of the thematic triangle, the important thing to remember is this. The character's core beliefs, whether they are right or wrong and whether they change, are an essential component of theme. An excellent example of the character component creating theme is It's a Wonderful Life. That movie is entirely centered on the character arc of George Bailey. Throughout the first half of the movie, we see his life, his mindset, and his struggles. George has big dreams. He wants to travel the world and do great things. He constantly talks about the places he wants to go and the impact he wants to have. He says, I'm shaking the dust of this crummy little town off my feet and I'm gonna see the world. And then I'm gonna build things. I'm gonna build airfields. I'm gonna build skyscrapers 100 stories high. I'm gonna build bridges a mile long. However, life gets in the way, and he ends up staying in his hometown, keeping his father's struggling bank afloat. He never travels the world, he never builds giant buildings. Then, due to a simple mistake, his entire life is in danger of falling apart. He begins to spiral, becoming angry and devaluing the things in his life. You call this a happy family? Why do we have to have all these kids? He asks. Rival businessman Mr. Potter tells him, you're worth more dead than alive. And with that, the lie is sealed. George Bailey believes his life has been worthless because he has made no impact and it's coming to nothing. He wishes he had never been born. The second part of the story is focused on breaking down the lie. He enters a world in which he had never been born and sees how much it has changed. He never did big things, but he sees that all the small things that he has done throughout his life did have a massive impact. He realizes how much worth his life truly has and declares, I want to live again. His arc communicates the thematic truth. Every life has worth because everyone impacts others. The second element of the thematic triangle I will discuss is the world. With the other two elements, character and plot, you can find a lot of information and resources. However, the world side of the thematic triangle is my own conception. A grouping of other writing concepts that I find often carry the same thematic function. I will first explain how world interacts with character to form theme as a supporting role. Then I will move on to explain how it looks when world is the primary foundation for theme rather than character. On the character side of the triangle, we focused on the character's core beliefs, which were defined as major beliefs the character has about the world around them. These beliefs have to be challenged in order to create an effective arc. But how are these beliefs challenged? They must be put to the test by operating in the world. There are beliefs about the world, but when put into practice, do they ring true? The world side of the triangle creates thematic context by forming an environment which will challenge the character's core beliefs. The world is formed to clash with the character to embody an imposing thematic stance to the character. Either the character will be changed to align with the world, or the world will change to align with the character. To see this in action, let's go back to It's a Wonderful Life. Because this film is so character-focused, the world side of the thematic triangle is rather subtle, but it is there. This story takes place in a world where an angel will come down and alter reality so that you realize the error of your ways and find joy and thankfulness. God exists, and divine purpose exists. The world operates in direct opposition to the idea that George's life was worth nothing. In this story, the character has to align with the world. Another excellent example is Captain America: Winter Soldier, which honestly deserves its own analysis video. Captain America's core belief is in trust and freedom, and the world of Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. come into direct opposition against those beliefs. In this story, the world is forced to align with the character. An important thing to note in both examples is that the world in each is not the entirety of human existence. It is a small piece of the world that operates on a certain set of principles, and those principles could be wrong or right. Often in a single story, there are multiple small worlds that express different points of view on the theme. In It's a Wonderful Life, the divine world represents the thematic truth, while the banking world represents the lie. Mr. Potter is a rival to George Bailey in the banking world, and he operates his business on principles of selfishness, not caring about his impact on others. Meanwhile, George follows in his father's footsteps and tries to make a difference in the lives of the people around him. The scene in which the board debates what will be done with his father's business is a battle between the thematic lie and truth, taking place in the world of banking. In this instance, the world changes to align with character. Another factor in the world side of the triangle is that it is often embodied in a character. Mr. Potter and Clarence embody the banking world and the divine world, respectively. In Winter Soldier, Nick Fury and Alexander Pierce both embody the world of mistrust and control, but one changes and thematically aligns with Captain America, and the other holds on and is defeated. That is how the world interacts with character to form theme. But what happens when world is the primary foundation of the theme rather than character? This is often the case in speculative fiction genres such as science fiction and fantasy. My concept of the world side of the triangle started with world building. Anytime a story takes place in a world that is different from our own, the author must imagine and build the world so that it makes sense. Whether the difference is small or large, the author must world build to some degree. Often this world building introduces or symbolizes the concepts that the theme deals with. For example, in a story in a world with robots, advanced AI, and cyborgs, could use those elements to explore themes regarding the rise of technology and how much it's integrated into our lives. Or, a story with a magic system can use that system to symbolize good and evil, selflessness and selfishness. When the world side of the triangle is the foundation, the symbolic nature of the world becomes the primary vehicle of theme. In the character side, the character's core beliefs are the fulcrum of the thematic concepts. They are where the theme originates. But when world is the fulcrum, the character's relationship and interactions with symbolic elements of the story shape the story. The world is the catalyst that brings the thematic concepts into the story rather than the character's core beliefs. This can be proven through two of our greatest world-centric stories, the original Star Wars trilogy and Lord of the Rings. In Star Wars, Luke does not have a specific core belief that needs to be changed. Instead, it is his relationship with the Force that is the primary vehicle of the theme. The Force symbolizes the choice between good and evil, the choice to be selfless or selfish. As explained by Yoda in Empire Strikes Back, the Force is the connection between all things. Users of the Force can manipulate it, and the dark side uses that connection to dominate others through anger and hate, which are easier to use. It is easier to act out selfishly and exert power over others than to choose good. Before Luke encounters the Force, he has no core beliefs regarding the natures of good and evil. He just wants to go out into the world. His encounters with the Force causes him to question and grapple with the thematic questions it symbolizes, the choice between good and evil. He fights the Empire, which represents the ultimate evil of selfish domination. The Force and the Empire are two different parts of the world, which converge in characters like Darth Vader and the Emperor, who are extensions of the Empire who use the dark side. The heavy lifting of the theme here is formed by the world creating thematic context through symbolism. Lord of the Rings deals with similar themes regarding good and evil, and the nature of temptation, corruption, and power. The closest thing Frodo has to a core belief is his love of the Shire, and the pure goodness of that enables him to resist the temptation of the ring. The ring represents ultimate evil and corruption, tempting all who encounter it with power to fulfill their wants. Gollum, Gandalf, Galadriel, Boromir, etc. Sauron himself is also a corruptive force, affecting characters like Denethor and Saruman, who becomes a corruptive force in his own right as well. The ring, which carries the spirit of Sauron, is a symbol of the world of evil, while the Shire is a symbol of the world of good. Without the world bringing this thematic conflict to the forefront, Frodo would have never had to grapple with it. His own core beliefs do not cause his opposition, but he is forced to operate in a thematic world, just like Luke, and they make choices within that thematic context. Both of these variations of world have the same common thread. The world side of the thematic triangle is a system or systems that operate on thematic principles. They symbolize different viewpoints and force characters to reconsider their own, or choose between multiple views. Ultimately, the world creates thematic context for the characters and story. But if character and world are about clashing thematic perspectives, what determines which one wins? What defines which thematic statement is the truth and which one is a lie? That job falls to plot. Plot is the fallout of characters and world colliding. The standard definition of plot is the sequence of events in a story. The plot is what actually happens. Most importantly, the plot is made up of the characters and forces of the world taking action and the consequences of those actions. Someone makes a choice and then that choice has a result. That process makes the plot of a story, and the plot brings objectivity into the thematic statement by telling you whether it works or not. Plot points and events on which the story turns can force a character to change their core beliefs. Plot shows you which one wins. A great example of plot at work is the origin story of Spider-Man. You most likely already know the story, but for simplicity's sake, I'll be referring to the version in the 2002 film directed by Sam Raimi, starring Tobey Maguire. So, let's do this one more time. Peter Parker was bitten by a radioactive spider, got superpowers, and used them selfishly. He beat up a bully and was planning on using them to win a wrestling match for money so that he could impress a girl with a car. Uncle Ben warned him that the path he was on was not a good one, telling him that with great power comes great responsibility. Peter ignored this advice and chose to continue using his powers irresponsibly and selfishly. He chose to let a criminal escape, and this criminal went on to kill Uncle Ben. Peter Parker realized his irresponsible choices with his power caused this to happen, and then he chose to change and use his power selflessly, becoming Spider-Man. The thematic truth in this story is obvious. With great power comes great responsibility. But a thematic statement on its own does not make a powerful story. To show the truth of this thematic statement, the events of the story, the plot, have to prove it. Peter rejected the truth, and the choices he made accordingly had consequences. These consequences then created a plot point that showed Peter he was wrong, and prompted him to change and embrace the truth. The other stories all have plot points that reveal which thematic statement is the truth. At the end of It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey realizes the value of his life and the impact he has had on others. And that impact results in his life, which was about to fall apart, being saved by the people he helped. In Star Wars, Luke chooses good over evil, resulting in Darth Vader killing the Emperor. In Lord of the Rings, the enduring power of friendship brings the ring to its place of destruction. And then, the self-destructive nature of evil results in the ring being destroyed. Crafting a good plot is all about organizing the events of your story in such a way that the consequences of the actions taken by the characters in the world reinforce the theme. Often this is done with the guidance of story structures, which are plot models that help you guide the emotional trajectory of your plot. There are many different story structure models, and none of them are perfect. Most of them just seem to describe the same thing with different words and varying levels of detail. I won't go over them here, but I do recommend looking into them. The main point is that the plot provides the story an objective lens through the consequences of thematic choices to see which thematic statement is the truth. Through the thematic triangle, you can deliberately infuse every element of your story with meaning by understanding how the different elements work together to create theme. In this video, I presented several quick examples. In the next, I'll put this theory to the test and use it as the basis of an in-depth analysis of one of my favorite movies, Rogue One, a Star Wars story. For me, the best part of the thematic triangle is its flexibility. You can start on any side of the triangle and work your way to the others. Any story can have some elements emphasized over others, and that's okay. Personally, I need to have a solid grasp on the character side, followed by plot and then world. Most of the time anyway, it's different for every story. But what about you? If you are a writer, which part of the thematic triangle do you most gravitate towards and why? Do you have any favorite uses of these elements? Or do you think there's something I've missed? Let me know in the comments section, I'd love to hear your thoughts. This has been Writing Constellations. Thanks for watching.